This video is going to go over how to solve quadratics by graphing. So previously we have learned how to solve quadratics by factoring, where you're trying to find the x-intercepts. So the very first thing I want to mention is when we're solving for a quadratic, we're finding the solutions. Well, what is a solution of a quadratic? Remember that solutions is another word for x-intercept. So when it's asking you to find the solutions, it's asking you to find the x-intercept. Now, we're solving by graphing, which means when we graph it, we're basically looking for the x-intercepts, and those are our solutions. But the very first thing you want to do every time you encounter a solve by graphing problem, you want to make sure you set it equal to 0. So you want one side equal to 0 when you do this. Okay, so we have 2x squared minus 6x equals -4. The thing that I like to strive for is I like to keep the x squared term positive. So if this was a negative 2x squared, then I would probably move that to the other side of my equal sign. But because it is already positive, I'm going to move everything else to this side. So since this x squared on this side is already positive, I'm going to move this -4 over here. But if this was negative, then I'm going to move this over here and this over here because I want the x squared to be positive. Okay. So first step is set it equal to 0. And I mentioned that I want the x squared positive, so I'm going to leave the 2x squared on that side, which means everything has to go onto the left-hand side here. So 4 does not have like terms with anything else, so this is what we have here, 2x squared minus 6x equals plus 4 equals 0. Now, the next part is super easy, just type it into Desmos. Now, when you type it into Desmos, you can't write it equal to 0 because it's not going to give you a quadratic. So normally it's 2x squared minus 6x plus 4, and there's like a y equals in the front. So if you want to type this into Desmos, I would type it either in just typing in this 3 terms only, or you can type in the y equals as well, but don't type in the equals 0 part. So either one of these is okay. The equals 0 is just to make sure everything's on the same side and we get the full picture. If it's not equal to 0, Desmos doesn't know what to do. So that's why we're moving everything to one side. Before we go on, oops, I went to photos on accident. Before we move on though, I do want to talk about, different types of solutions that you may have. So there is a scenario where you would have a graph that looks like this. Remember, solutions is an x-intercept. So in this case, how many x-intercepts does this graph have? Well, if I click on it, there's 2 dots on the x-axis. I have 2 x-intercepts, -4, 0, and 1, 0. And remember that x-intercepts are number, comma, 0. So I could have 2 solutions. I could also have a graph that looks like this. Well, this graph has only 1 x-intercept, 1, 0. So I could have 2 solutions, I could have 1 solution, or I could have 0 solutions because it doesn't touch the x-axis. So there are 3 different scenarios here, so you want to make sure that you're aware of all of those things. So now I'm going to type in the equation. It is going to be 2x squared minus 6x plus 4. Okay, so this is the equation that we're given. Now, here I can see that I have 2 x-intercepts. It crosses the x-axis at 2 points, at 1, 0, and at 2, 0. So this is solving by graphing, so you do have to actually plot these. So 1, 0, and 2, 0. And then it looks like my vertex is at 1.5, -0.5, so it'll be like here, okay? And then my y-intercept is at 0, 4. So again, if you tap on the graph, it'll highlight all the important points that you can graph, but this is our quadratic here. So I've graphed it. Now I'm going to state the solutions. Now again, you could have 0 solutions, 1 solution, or 2 solutions, depending on your graph. In this case, I have 2 solutions. I have one at 1, 0, and I have one at 2, 0. So I'm just going to list them out like that. So again, you could have where you have no solution, so you just put none. If you have 1 solution, you would list that 1 solution. And again, a solution is an x-intercept, so just make sure we're comfortable with that vocabulary. But that is it for solving by graphing.